Hey everybody, what I'm going to do is show you how I'm going to use this little outhouse that I just made, a very simple shape, but what I'm going to do is show you how to use the TrueSpace procedural textures to create this wood pattern, and then how to, what's commonly called, I guess, in the 3D world, as baking your textures. Well, basically it's making a rendering of this texture and then using that render as your texture image. And that's basically where you bake in your shadows. In this case, you see this shadow here, and that was baked in. That's part of the texture itself. And that's what baking the texture means. So anyway, that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to show you. So let me get rid of that and I'll adjust my view here. And to make a quick explanation of the first thing you have to do is open your material shader or material editor. You get to that with this painter's palette here, this icon of a painter's palette. You just regular left click it and you'll get this box. And this is your materials editor, and it has 4 different areas of, well, actually more, but the 4 main controls that you have, or 3 main controls, are your color picker. Now again, these are for procedural procedural textures. A color picker, you have a bump map control, and your reflectance control. And I can open these up this way with this little button here, close it with that button, or I can select each one individually by clicking on its icon. And let me go to reflectance. What I wanted to show you is the setup that you should have when you're working on ruler rail objects. And these are the only 2 settings you need to worry about: your reflectance and this. Over here right now, the default setting is for what they call auto facet, and what that does is it tries to smooth in auto facet mode. It tries to smooth out flat surfaces by shading. Well, in this particular case, I don't want that. I'm working on a flat surface. I want it to be flat. I don't want it to be flat shaded to make it look like it's rounded. Plus, unless you bake these shadows like we're going to do, unless you bake that shading in, it does not export to ruler rails. Ruler rails does not use procedural shading of any sort, whether it's the shadows or the reflectance or anything else. So for your reflectance, and the reason you want to do this is so that while you're working on your model in TrueSpace, TrueSpace uses DirectX for its display drivers. So if you have your settings set this way, you turn your luminance all the way down and your diffusion all the way up. You have no shine and no specularity. And over here, instead of using this auto facet mode, you go to the flat face shading, flat surface shading, like that. With those set like that, whatever I do to this model, it's going to look, except for maybe the lighting setup. And one of these days I'll sit down and work up a lighting setup that resembles ruler rails, but for now I don't have one. But with these settings, this model will look pretty much as it will appear in ruler rails with those settings like that. Okay, this is a little outhouse, and I think, in my opinion, it should be made out of old cheap pine, old knotty pine, and that pine would be weathered nice and gray. And so I'm going to use one of their wood procedural shaders. Now, to access that, what I need to do is either right click on this icon or right click in the middle of this window here. Either way, it'll load up. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the reflectance. These are all your reflectance setups, preset reflectance. And that's not what I want. So I'm going to get rid of that. I need my color picker. Right click there and I'll get my shaders. These are preset material shaders. The regular old plain color, which is what it is right now. It's not a color, but I can change that if I wanted. Now you have all these different shaders that do all kinds of strange things, like bricks and things like that, but marble, polka dots. But what I want to use is wood, and you see that they have 3 wood shaders, preset shaders here, and each one affects the model differently or shows up differently. I want to use this one. This is called the wrapped wood, and it has some pretty nifty little settings here that is exactly what I want for this model. So I'm going to select that and I'm going to set it up so I can see what I'm doing here. Okay. In this shader they have preset wood grains, and you can make up your own. There's a couple of settings in here that you'll end up having it look like pressed wood. But they have a pine setting, preset pine, and it's not too bad. Looks pretty convincing. But the other thing I want here, the other presets that they have, is the style of the board pattern. They have squares and a herringbone, and if I give it a little bit of a groove there, you'll be able to see what those look like. The squares, I think the square basically is like a tile, and floorboards, which is what I want, and the other one is a ladder effect, and I'm not exactly sure what that ladder is, but anyway, I want the floorboards. And just in general, that's what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and paint the model with it, and I can do that a couple of ways. I can either flood fill. Right now I have the model is selected, not the roof, just the model. I mean the house itself, and I can flood it with that texture. Now it's not sitting properly because I haven't set the UV projection yet, but that's one way to paint this object, is either with a flood fill. There's another way. I'll back to the white. There's another way to paint it. You can paint individual faces, and it's not showing up. There's a reason for that, and what I'm going to do is force it to show those textures. That has something to do with the cache, available cache, or the available memory, or something like. I don't know why it does that. When it doesn't always do that. Sometimes it'll show the texture, but it has to do with refreshing the cache. Anyway, so I can paint individual surfaces like that. The other thing I can do, let me back up a couple of steps and make a couple of those surfaces white. The other way I can paint this is with the paint roller, and that has a special thing that wherever I click that, whatever surface I click that on, if I make a change here, let's say I want to keep this white, or no, let's do it the other way. I want to keep this yellow board, but here I want this really strange looking wood. If I click on the white, then in that model, any surface that's white is going to get that new material, and that's how that paint roller works. It looks for wherever you click it, it looks on that model for that particular material to paint. But that's not what I want to do. I want to flood the whole. Well, I don't have to back up. Let me reset this. Well, there's another way to get get this material back. I can use my eyedropper, click on that, and it gives me, and it puts it into the thing. And I'm going to flood it. Okay, so now it's painted with that material. It's not set yet. I got to do some settings to it, but I need it to sit on the model properly. So I'm going to use my UV projection tools to set that. That's this little blue and white checkered cube down here, and you have 4 UV projections. You have a spherical projection, cylindrical, cubic, and planar projection. That's it. This is the UV projection. Now I'm not going to go into real detail of what that actually means, but because this is pretty much a cube, that's what I'm going to use. It's just something you have to play with and see how your texture sits on the model you're working on with different projection modes. Okay, like I said, this is still not sitting right. That scaled it a little bit better, but it's still not. It's sitting wrong. I want my boards to be vertical. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm still adjusting my UV projection, and so what I need to do is rotate that bounding box. I'm going to use my snap because my grid snap in rotation is set for 45 degrees. So if I snap it twice, it'll be 90. So I'm going to turn it once, and I'm going to turn it again, and that turns it. Now I know that it's exactly 90 degrees. And that's pretty good. That's got, get out of snap. That's got all my boards are running vertical. Right now they're too big, but I'll adjust that. There's a couple other things that you can do with this bounding box. You can scale it. You use your normal object navigation tools, and I can scale it up, I can scale it down, and I can move it around. I can move it, I can rotate it all kinds of ways and do all kinds of weird stuff with it. The one thing is that in TrueSpace 3.2 you won't see this immediate effect. You won't see it in real time. It's very handy. They added this to TrueSpace 6 and above, but you won't see that immediate reaction to your texture. You have to set your UV and set it like that by right clicking, and when you do that, then your texture will snap to that new setting. It's a bit of a tedious trial and error in 3.2 doing that. But anyway, so my UV is now set the way I want it, and so now it's time to play with the settings on this. And basically I want this. That would work, but that's too fresh. They just built that. I don't want that fresh look. I want a gray wood look. So I'm going to adjust my colors, and this is the basic wood color. I'm going to make it a little bit darker. My grain color, I'm going to go to gray, grayish. I'm going to leave them about the same brightness, and my ring color, that I'm going to darken up, but I'm going to go that to gray, grayish. I'm still in a purple range. I'm closer to red than I am to yellow. There, that's not bad. Alright, let's paint that. Well, that's a pretty good weathered, almost looks like saltwood if it was greenish, but that's not bad for weathered, for that weathered look on pine. Now the grain is too big, so I'm going to scale that down. I'm going to scale down the grain. That also, that actually scales down the whole pattern. The point of this exercise basically is to show you that there is no set procedures for doing this. You play with your numbers until it looks the way you want it to look. This variation will vary the color of the board itself, give some darker, some lighter. It just gives it that random look. I don't need to adjust the length, but if I back down on this length, you'll see that what it does is it creates little boards. which that could be cool, but that's not what I want. And another thing is you only will see these changes after applying it to the model. So that's not too bad. Actually, that's pretty convincing. Maybe make it a little bit more knotty, not that much. Let's try right about there. I don't think I changed it much. That's pretty good. I'm not going to worry about the fuzz grain. Pine does not have a lot of fuzz grain, what they call fuzz grain. You'll see that more in oak and cherry, and it puts it's this fuzziness to the grain. But anyway, that's not bad. I like that. So I think that's what we'll use. So the next part of this is going to be turning that into an image based texture.